welcome folks to another episode coming in of the NA podcast. It's not acceptable where we're running through all the news, all our opinions, and maybe all your opinions. I don't know. I'm fine. I'm joined by Paladin, and well, I think this week's headlines definitely gave us the ringer. It really stretched our mental, didn't it, man?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as we started seeing these headlines, I was like so looking forward to the end of the week or the start of the week of this podcast because we've got a lot of different headlines to run through, a lot of just really aggressive topics that I can't wait to get into, and I'm excited to be here.
I mean, look, we're not even like clickbaiting here. We'll just go ahead and run you with our first headline, and that is it like a headline even? Like, I don't know what to say about this. EG supposedly coming here to, save the NA scene. I think they have. I think their Bluepoint project is at least a moderate success so far. What is going on with their main team, though? They add in, purportedly, and actually I think this is now official, they're dropping in Masuda and Nealon to their ranks. This just doesn't seem like it's it.
Yeah, it even with the European replacements, right? I think I talked about this previously, but we went from like HooXi and Valde, who are very tenured players in the grand scheme of things, and then we decided to pick apart even that and drop a tier in that conversation as well and bring in Nealon, an IGL from K23 who hasn't really done much as far as international prowess is concerned, and Masuta as well from the French Vitality remnants, right? And the problem here is that it's just not gonna cut it, right? EG used to be a North American organization that was contending for tier 1 titles. They were defeating the likes of Prime Astralis in tournaments on home soil. They were one of the premier organizations for North America. And as of right now, this is just such a fall from grace and is a real telltale understanding of where we're really at with EG, right? We can't necessarily consider them as a premier organization anymore. They are frankly a tier 2 North American organization. I only put Liquid in that conversation, and until I'm proven otherwise, that's what the situation is going to be.
Harsh criticism, but probably deserved. I don't want to give the players at least too much hate for themselves, but come on, guys.
I don't, for sure.
Look, we suffered enough, and I hope we can at least enjoy a little bit more than this. Sure, Masuda's a great player, but I mean, and I will give EG a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, saying that the player market is so constricted at the moment that to say, like, okay, who else are you going to get? I mean, everyone's probably clamoring to go ahead and get MOUZ on their books instead of ccerc, who I think there's always that discussion to be had of whether ccerc still is alive or not and still has life in him to play, and apparently EG thinks he does. I mean, I'll be the devil's advocate and say that Masuda is a player that can take over games. Now, and the thing is on Vitality, he was never really set up to be that guy, to be successful. No. He had to play the hard roles. And admittedly, like, there were certain games where, boy, did he shine and just carry Vitality on his back. Maybe if he has some setup, he's going to become a superstar on this team, but I'm not going to lie here, Pally. I'm putting a lot of chips on my table.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of down and out on this whole thing. To me, it's more the success of their other rosters, and I'm sure we'll talk about that because in our best region section, because that's also a thing that's going through its own set of issues that I'm hoping gets ironed out. But, we'll keep the ball rolling, and we'll move on to the other talk of the town. We have JKS coming into G2 after having an incredible stint on FaZe in that crazy stand-in run over there at Katowice. And now they want to pull apart Jax from the roster, bring in JKS. And there's a lot of talking about the role clashes that this guy has and whether or not he'll be comfortable on this team. Because I know we've had a lot of conversation previously about players just feeling comfortable in the environments that they're in. And G2 has been one that's filled with a lot of pressure. So what do you necessarily think about this move, Fi? Because does it actually feel like their trophies on the horizon? Because keep in mind, they haven't won a trophy in quite a long time, an S-tier trophy, mind you. Or is it just more trouble on the horizon? They miscalculate this.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things, and everyone, at least there was a big article that came out recently from HLTV, expert take, Maui, Snake, and Kasad talking about, oh, is this a real role clash? And they both said, oh, yes, JKS, he'll mold into these roles just fine. In fact, this is some of the roles that he's actually wanted to play, and there's also talk of the town where Xtaz on Twitter saying that Hunter's not playing his optimal roles. And so now he might get the better roles, and everyone on the team is going to finally... JKS is the missing puzzle piece. The issue is this, and that is JKS even in his prime anymore? Is the biggest thing. In fact, has JKS even found himself to thrive in the positions that he's wanted, so to speak? Now, I won't say that complexity really catered for this player, but under the Blame F system, this man suffered as being just an anchor player, being he kind of was just thrown out there. It's like, go lurk, JKS. Yeah, kind of as that. He was never really the aggressive role player. He kind of just said, you have to do what you want. He's isolated from the team. He wasn't comfortable, and while this little stint from FaZe is like everyone's getting hyped about JKS, you can't ignore the past that this player has struggled to adapt in, completely new environments. This is a dangerous move for G2. Of course, what other options do they got? I mean, I'm hyped. I'm hyped to see JKS on board, but this is still a very dangerous move, and this could pan out for the worst.
I think the CT sides will definitely come up a little bit better. I think Jax was sorely lacking in that department. Anchoring was really lackluster. I mean, the real reason why he was on the team is how impressive his entries were on the T side. That it kind of was like, okay, well, he has some openings here or there that we can kind of let it slide on the CT side. We have fantastic CT players. Hunter and Nico will always come up with the goods. Monesi as well, with that CT op as well. But the issue is again, the main point of contention will always be those T sides, and I think that's where he really needs comfort. And if that comfort doesn't come to him, that's going to be a problem. And the man that you're replacing, right, is going to be Jax, who had a lot of terrible roles, a lot of grunt work that he needed to take care of. And so I'm worried that this guy isn't going to feel in his element, and that is like one of the number one things that I think a player like him needs out of all of them. And think about the situation that he had to be when he was on FaZe, right? It was a team that was like, very gung-ho about the situation at hand. They're like, hey, we made playoffs. We won that one series with JKS to get here. Yeah. And at this point, it's kind of just win or go home. No, there's no real dig at our successes or whatnot. And now it's an environment where there is pressure. You have been signed onto a premier organization, a tier 1 organization that is expected to bring in results. And if you can't actually bring in those results, the community and G2 fans especially, man, they are going to be at your doorstep immediately. They are so impatient in some senses of the word, and I don't blame them, because the fact of the matter is Ocelot, Carlos, he throws in a lot of money into this organization, and results are expected. And so there's going to be a lot of pressure on JKS. And I think as far as the intangibles are concerned, that's what I'm most nervous about. Is he going to rise to that occasion? Is he going to kind of define himself as the greatest Australian player of all time and really create a career out of himself and kind of break past whatever he went through in the complexity and say that was a blip in the radar? We're here to really make a name for ourselves and talk about why I was so good on Renegades and why I'm here to stay on G2.
Yeah, I agree with those points. Just saying, like, there's going to be pressure on these players. I mean, JKS specifically has had the weight of an organization behind him and has definitely had a fan base behind him. But I'll tell you who hasn't. That man is the second piece of this G2 puzzle. That is HooXi. This is a completely new ballpark for this man. Coming from an experience, at least a pretty successful Copenhagen Flames, he is now playing for an S-tier organization with S-tier players who have been in the top 5 consistently, top 20 even. We all know Monesi is going to be on that list sometime in the near future as well. He is with, like, the IGL's quote-unquote dream, or maybe, according to Pimp, maybe it's not. Maybe the egos are a big issue. Who knows? But can he lead this group of just S-tier players to victory, or can the pressure get to him?
Well, we've already had one go-around of this where an IGL has everything that they could ask for, right, with Alexi B, and look how that panned out. Obviously, that is just the results as of what happened, it's not necessarily set in stone how well HooXi is going to succeed. And the conversation that we've kind of seen around Maui Snake in particular, he's kind of trying to dissect what could have been brought in and what actually has been brought in. And obviously, nothing's set in stone. The reports are still out, but it feels inevitable at this point. But the fact of the matter is you kind of had two big options that might have worked, one being Alex and one being HooXi. And the reason why people might have gone with Alex in this situation is that he has more respect under his peers, and he's played under the very quote unquote bigger egoed players in players like Ashox or just French players in general. We've had a history of drama. I mean, it is very funny in hindsight, but we've heard so many stories about just teams just falling apart because of just emotions flying high, and that would have been a team that maybe G2 and Alex could have found a meeting of the minds and it might have worked out. But the thing is, HooXi's style might actually cater to this team much better than maybe an Alex might show. But the issue is, again, is that all of this is on paper. We're going to work out, right? But in actual practice, that is something that G2 has really struggled with and actually hasn't been able to convert. And that's what I'm worried about. Is that going to come back to bite HooXi again? And is it going to be another IGL that kind of has his reputation of something where he's made something out of nothing just be tarnished once he has everything? That's what I'm really worried about.
Yeah, I mean, okay. There is one, shred of hope. And, when you get past the pressure, he needs to have a good event. All right. I think the biggest thing for someone joining such a prestigious organization is just having a manageable event with these guys. That's what's on the chopping block for these guys. Let's keep moving forward as we gonna go ahead, head over towards the news coming out from Big Clan. Quick introduction to this one, because this one just feels a bit out of the blue when you talk about management decisions.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like we saw a couple of rumors floating around that tabseN and Gabi were both in talks to sign with G2, and now they're kind of doubling down on the whole German aspect of things. I did a video with Thorn on Rescope talking about the best IGLs that haven't necessarily won a major thus far, and people are trying to bring up tabseN, and that is a player that I've always admired for how much dedication and respect that he's given to the German scene to try to big it up as much as possible. And now they're doubling down with the 2027 situation. So I tried to write down in our notes that this is a very similar situation to that of Furia, in the sense that they've also been locked under a severe contract as well. And I think the big difference here is that these guys are much older within their prime and within their years in Counter-Strike, that they've kind of made peace with themselves, that they want to try to big up the German talent in the scene with the players like Krimbo, players like Faven, and make sure that the German scene is in good hands before they make their way out the door in that said 2027. And we kind of have to put the whole international conversation out to pasture and say, this is what tabseN and Gabi's legacy is going to be, and we got to be here for it and support it, because I still think that they have a lot more to give, and I'm a lot more for this than something like the Furia move.
Yeah, I think tabseN as a whole is one of the most, I think he's in his prime right now, and he might still have, I think he could still potentially have 5 years left in him. Honestly, it doesn't seem like this man has slowed down at all. In fact, I think he's the driving force of Big Clan right now. He frags when the team needs to. So, shout outs to tabseN. I'll put that one on the map. Let's quickly move down to, well, what has gone down to the We Play thing. Now, enjoy the 9Z logo while you got it. But for now, MOUZ NXT have gone ahead and been dethroned. I think it's worth tossing this one over to a 3-box if I could set that one up. But while we're approaching the bell, of course, MOUZ NXT are 4-3 in their group right now, Pally. Is there anything about that?
It is so weird, the teams that they're losing to. They're losing to 0-0 Prospects, who, by the way, have won 2 games of their 8 played, and one of those wins is against MOUZ NXT. They've also lost to Eternal Fire Academy, who they handily beat in their very opening match. So it's a very odd situation, all things considered. I'm not going to just go out and say that they're in deep like panic territory, because they're still sitting pretty on the table as far as that is concerned. They'll get through the gauntlet as far as I'm concerned as well. I don't think it's warning signs just yet. They still have like practically half of their season left to go. But it is good to see that there is competition in Group A.
Yep, so that's going to go ahead and do it for the segment. We'll cover the rest that we have here in the overtime segment at the end of the show. So if you want to hear us, ramble on about Imperial and the Sprout moves, I think we do have a little bit on that said Sprout move in a little bit, but that'll come later into overtime. But first things first, of course, we have to move to the best region here, Pally. So we'll go ahead and send that one right on over.
Before I got cut off, I love the transition, but I always forget about it. But hey, this is the moment that I've been waiting for, and I just want I want to get right into it. Right, a lot of EG news, all things considered, when you look at the right hand side of your screen. But we got to talk about Carpe Diem, Classia being removed for, again, very similar issues that Carpe Diem and RGB or RBG.
Yeah, you got
RBG,
it. You got it.
Yeah, ran into the previous lineups where they dropped Classia for those attitude issues, and now they want to go back to they got to go back to Old Faithful, the first love of the EG organization. We got to bring back in Stanislaw. What do you think about this insanely predictable move?
So there was a take I saw on Twitter. Now, I can't remember who exactly said it. I might be miscrediting it and say it was Koi. But EG just booted. The whole point of this blueprint system is to develop players into contenders. Now, everyone's laughing at Classia because he got removed. He got the opportunity of his lifetime, and he blew it because of being toxic. The whole point of this program is maybe to try and reel in a player like that. For those who don't know what kind of player Classia is, he is, individually speaking, probably the best player in North American Tier 2. Please, if this Blueprint project is going to succeed, you got to reel this guy in. And even then, at the same time, you're creating more problems, not just by removing by far and away your statistically best player, but at the same time, you're taking IGL duties away from Walco and adding in Stanislaw. Now, Stanislaw is not a bad IGL, but boy does it mess with the dynamic of this team, who, keep in mind, is not your average NA team making a move every, 2 months or so.
You've stuck together, yeah.
These guys, they have stuck together with these 4 players. At least we're talking Walco, Wiz, Chop, and Hex. Those guys have been together for over 2 years. And you can't just break that chemistry of Walco IGLing this team since the team kind of reformed back in just late 2020. It's
not to mention that, like, there's been some real struggles with Stanislaw calling with ECL teams. Like, look at the success of B-Hop. It's very lackluster, and maybe you're saying it's wrong time, wrong place. But in my eyes, it just seems like his calling is outdated, and there isn't a place for him until he decides to kind of reinvent his career. I think I'm done, and I'm out with this handouts that EG continuously gives to Stanislaw, especially with the lineup that has been together for so long. And as you're saying, this program is here and dedicated to make sure that these players develop. That is the point of this program. It is to develop, and that when they all go out to greener pastures, that they can achieve whatever they need to achieve once they learned whatever they had to learn through this Bluepoint project. And if that's not able to happen, then what the hell is the point of this program? If there is no point, this is not a advancement to some of these players' careers. It may even be a step back. I'm really nervous about their ECL season, all things considered. I don't think that they're going to be able to replicate the kind of performances that they provided after last season. That's just a real cause for concern.
I want to leave this with one last thought as well, and I'm just feeling sad for Classia specifically. He's a player who's always been left by the road by tons of teams. It has been this attitude issue that has been holding him back, but the individual ability is there, and if you ever watch him play, bless you. Well, let's keep moving this one along, because now, well, Stewie 2K has gone and left for streaming. You know, I think a lot of us here in North America, I mean, yeah, give your salutes. I'm calling it like Shroud 2.0 or whatever it is. But you know, his last competitive 6 months have been abysmal. And I think there is no doubts about that. But does that have an impact here on the NA scene? Would we rather have Stewie down here in tier 2, or is he better off just go ahead and playing CS with Mo?
It doesn't look like he Mo, yeah, I mean, it looks like he doesn't care, okay? And that is just an outsider looking in. It looks like he just doesn't care. Like, he put out that tweet, right? And after that tweet, we've had so much drama coming out from the EG situation. We have players just feeling very toxic about the whole thing. You have just, well, we'll talk about it in a little bit. We have, like, clearly the coaches had just an issue with him as a player. And he had nowhere near as good of a career form that we were expecting from him. Just disarray all around. If he went to a tier 2 project, it would have been a very similar situation, but just with younger players, more impressionable players that you have a potential to perhaps even mess with how they're developing as well. That I don't think that even the rest of the Blueprint project had space for him, because it would have just messed with how he perceives himself, that he belongs on this main roster, and being relegated down to anything other than that would have been just detrimental to anything that he went on regardless, right? So I think that this is probably going to be the best situation for EG in terms of they don't have to worry about that chemistry clash anymore in that regard. And now they can kind of just focus on creating an actual team, although the pieces aren't actually that great.
Dude,
there's a commitment to
there
it,
is
right?
a segment in this segment that's called More EG that talks a little bit further of, oh god. Should we just move to, you want to move to that topic? You just want to,
yeah,
I want to,
honestly, they're
because
one and the same.
it almost has a direct correlation here, as, yeah, EG, well, Stewie 2K is gone, all the attitude issues just, you know, they vanished away here, Paladin. Look at this solution.
Oh man, dude, I read this article and we were reading it on call together, and I read it 3 different times because I just didn't understand what I was reading. Okay, and basically, what is being stated here is that both Vorborg, ex co-owner of CPH Flames, is being brought on as the head coach of Evil Genius's main roster, as well as calls being brought up to maLeK, former head coach of Evil Geniuses, to return back to the main roster, supposedly the main roster, and we're going to have some kind of tag team situation here. I have no idea what the plan of this team is, what the identity of this team is. The title of this thumbnail is "What is EG's plan?" I straight up still don't know what the plan is, and I don't think I ever will, even after blast groups go underway.
I mean, how are you maLeK? How do you feel when EG, like a month and a half after just like ruthlessly kicking you, are now asking for you to come back? Like, how would you feel?
He must be feeling so like just happy that, you know, hey, I was right in this situation, and I'm glad you guys are back.
I would, you know, I would be tempted to just hold up the middle finger and say, no, no, you kidding me? At the same time, I mean, Vorborg, well, he's like a co-owner of Copenhagen Flames. He was the coach for the, at least from what I can tell, for the last 6 months for the team, even during their major run. I've actually had the chance to talk with him even about, you know, his team's regimen. He is a regimented coach. He cares a lot about his players' improvement.
Yeah.
So, I mean, shit, get him on for the Blueprint, but like, right here, you need 2 coaches for the main team. One of them who probably doesn't.
It's that messed up, Fi. It's that messed up.
EG's plan, I guess, we can tell EG's plan is just to sign everyone, I guess. That works.
The Astralis way.
All right. With the little time we do have, I don't want to, like, conform to it, but we can check in on what the Hallzerk deal is all like, because, hey, complexity have their solution, or so we might think.
So I think that a big problem with the complexity situation right now is just a mentality thing. Like, a lot of Pro CS comes down to just on the day, how confident are you actually feeling about your roster and who you're playing around with? And it didn't look like it was cutting it with the win percentage that they were getting and going into all these international tournaments, tier 1 tournaments, and just coming dead last every single time. And now bringing in Hallzerk, a free agent who has had some promise tied to his name for quite some time. Hey, maybe this is going to be the solution where, you know, a lot of the negative talk about this team was coming down to Junior and his negative performances, and that having a player like Hallzerk, international so-called superstar, now has the opportunity to do it in NA and maybe bring that forward into EU. So I'm trying to look forward and say that this is a great sign for Complexity. And if this doesn't actually work out in the future, that's when you're gonna have to start looking at the actual structural integral parts of this team and say, hey, maybe JT, maybe TC, maybe we got to take a step back here and make some structural just refocuses and try to focus our identity in a different direction.
Yeah, I want to get one thing in before we move on, and that is finally Complexity have what can be classified as a superstar opper. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, JT Systems, his entire career, well, I mean, it's mostly been spent with OC, no lie, but he's had a superstar opper. He gets his superstar opper. I think this is only could be good for Complexity. So good luck to them. Let's go ahead and move on down to NA or EU, because this is our favorite segment, everyone's favorite segment, where we say whether these small headlines are NA or EU. Starting things off here, Pally, HAVU revealing their new lineup. I can give you the list of players if you're already looking at off to the side. Give it just a moment, as it is a couple of, you know, Finnish veterans. They're bringing zεν off the bench, who hasn't played an official in maybe gosh I don't know, like almost a year. And a couple of up and coming players. What do you think?
This is like a lineup that, like, after like ENCE's Katowice run, and then like they like fell apart as a Finnish organization, that you like put together this lineup, you'd be like, hey, you want to hear this pipe dream? I was putting it as his roster. And so, like, I mean, honestly, it's like, okay. It's cool to see Dodo back on the team, because I thought that he wasn't necessarily a problem on ends, but like obviously the upgrade that they got made a lot of sense in the situation that they had. So it was like, okay, well, it kind of makes sense that Dodo's dropping out of this roster. But I still have my reservations on Spargo on this team. I had some cool little clips that I saw from him when I casted Elisa with Kova, but I've yet to see him kind of pop off against like some big top 30, top 20 teams, that it's going to be difficult for me to say that this lineup is fantastic. So I'm honestly going to go NA in this time, because I think they just don't have enough firepower to kind of go all the way in and like deep in these tournaments. I still think they've got a ways to go.
I'll jump on the EU bus here. I think picking up zεν is actually a really big deal for the guys over at HAVU. Now, it is actually rolling the dice to see if zεν plays up to his, you know, normal caliber, because I think he's such a good player. And can you believe it? He's actually broken 30 years old as a player.
It doesn't feel like it.
It doesn't feel like it, but he hasn't played in forever. But if he can still capture that earlier form that he had with FPX, I think there's still some legs to this lineup.
Okay, I mean, we'll keep it moving to the next little bit of our NA or EU segment. Godsent released their academy roster. The young gods are mortal, so to speak. I mean, they didn't play a single week play academy match right before they actually had to go underway. The CEO came online and said, it's with a heavy heart that we're actually getting rid of these players, especially with the fact that Godsent hasn't actually run with the lineup ever since they gave away their core to 00 Nation. So what do you feel about this fight? Because as of right now, I think this is just a bummer, because it feels like Godsent is kind of jumping ship. I mean, overall, I'll have to just say it's an NA move, in the sense that, like, I don't feel like this project got to actually see that much. They only got to see really one season of WePlay, and
it wasn't a bad season though. It wasn't a bad season even.
There was promise there.
And you know, the craziest part about this team is the average age was about, I mean, okay, I'm not doing, you know, perfect math here, but just kind of adding the players here. The average age was like 17. These guys were so young. Snowzine was like so incredible, and he's age 15. There's so much. I mean, you're cooking with gas here, Godson. You were cooking with gas. Of course, I understand you're not in the Brazilian scene anymore, but like, The Brazilian scene is still super, super lucrative, and you also have some super like high potential players to work with. I'm gonna call this NA. I think they let go of this just a little too early. I mean, I maybe let them play out the season of we play. Come on now.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyways, let's just keep it straight, keep it moving. As we're gonna go ahead and cover over Ecstatic's rebuild. They drop both Bird from Sky and if memory serving me correctly, please. Yeah, no, it is more or less Bird from Sky. Can you please, if you have, was there a second?
It is
player?
Zello.
Zello as well. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what was like surprising. That's what was eluding me. Losing Zello as well. I thought they were crushing it for a little bit there.
So when they lost Wolfie, I think that they lost a lot of their momentum. Like they were fringe top 20, I believe, because they were winning so many like tier 2 tournaments, and like they were on the verge of getting like these like crazy big invites. But once they brought in Zello, he did also have a lot of individual prowess. I think he found a little bit more form than Wolfie to the tail end of his time on Ecstatic. And it looked like they kind of were like gaining a little bit more momentum. Fasher was really coming into his own. He was looking like a fantastic player, but they never really found, like, it just always felt like they were a shadow of themselves. This is just a bummer all around. I think that both of these players had a lot to give to Ecstatic. I'm just gonna go with NA because the rumored move. So first of all, Zello's going back to Nexus, a Romanian team, and the supposed move here is that Bird from Sky is going to be joining the Copenhagen Flames lineup that will be rumored to show up at some point. But I'm not really a big fan of that lineup. And I think that Bird from Sky could have done a little bit more work here, kind of molding and bringing Fasher to another lineup, another star-studded lineup, so to speak.
Huh. I mean, it's always like you're getting so close. A lot of these teams get so close. They're on the precipice. They almost find consistency. They almost start winning events. But you just don't have the pieces to push forward. I'm not gonna say that this is like a great move. Like, wow, they have just revitalized this. They've solved all of their problems in one move. There is still a quite the road for this Ecstatic team to take. They have some amazing pieces. Fasher, his name is. That guy is a superstar in the making. Oh, yeah. And shoot, I mean, maybe he's running. People say he's running out of gas because he's reaching his middle years. But man, that guy is a superstar. This Ecstatic team still has legs. I'll say EU. They're doing what it takes to find results here, Pally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, let's keep it going then. I think another big conversation that we're having in the tier 2 space is Sprout after an abysmal conference run and a Valencia run where they were expected to make deep runs in both of those tournaments, have shockingly decided to make a somewhat, I'd say, spontaneous move, or perhaps it was being talked about for quite some time with the player break going on. But Speedy, after being on this organization for over 40 years,
40 years,
yeah,
it almost feels like that.
Yeah, but he's being dropped from this lineup, as well as the IGL that was brought onto this team during their original rebuild of Rawls.
Yeah,
also reportedly trying to go to that CPH Flames roster as well. The reason why I'm going to go with EU with this one is that I think Speedy's replacement is supposedly supposed to be Xiphon. I tweeted about it today. Although Xiphon isn't going to like an outstanding tier 1 team or whatnot like his peers, who cares, man? Joining hands with Lounks, that is awesome. That duo is just so exciting. Hell yeah.
You know, this is the same exact situation that Ecstatic has. They get so bleeping fucking close. You know what? Screw that. They get so damn close. Like, so painfully close to making it to these big events, and then they falter in the final. You're gonna have to re-scrap it. You can't keep failing like this. And they got the right pieces to do it. They solved that. Moving on. Checking out at least this monstrosity. Henny to MIBR.
So the problem here is that Brinson, I don't think he had the chops to be an AWP player. I think he always felt kind of out of his depth, and he was like trying to learn this role a lot, and he was kind of getting strung along. I loved him as a rifler in particular, so I like that aspect of it. But hey, this just feels like we're trying to patch up some really ugly situations. I think Henny has kind of run its course. He never looked good on Godsend when they brought him on. I think that he has kind of lost his prime. I think he's going to be regretting that Furia move for the rest of his life. This is an NA move. I don't know who's going to be calling on this team. What's going to go on with MIBR? I don't even know if we're going to see them at the next conference. That's how
it's complete chaos. Complete chaos. NA. We have one final shout, but I do want to save that for overtime because it deserves a little bit more conversation than it does. We'll be talking about that's Snakes X, a longtime North American prodigy, is actually returned back to North American competition. We'll go ahead and hit back on that during overtime as we go ahead and move the show right on along. Because, folks, we're kind of doing a little bit of a special segment. Because last season, we want to take a look back on, well, minor regions and what these minor regions have accomplished. Because I think this season was honestly where the minor regions came out to play. We have 4 different segments here, Paladin. And first things first, I want to take a good look at least on Asian CS. You got to see them at the conference. What good did you see from them?
Well, to be completely honest with you, I think in the conference they didn't actually show what they were made of enough. Tyloo especially, like there was a lot to be desired. There's a lot of rumors flying around that they didn't actually get to eat before their elimination game, and they got eliminated on an empty stomach. Blah blah blah. But the problem is that they have a very limited amount of opportunities, and it sucked that Tyloo was able to capitalize on it. I expected them to go a little bit deeper.
Right.
But the team that I'm actually a lot more excited about, and the reason why I think we wanted to do this segment in general, was Rare Atom and how much success that they had at Challenger Valencia. They were actually supposed to be the conference representative, but they couldn't make it because of visas and whatnot. But I'm so glad that they got to make the trip out to Spain because, man, the stories of these players and how they came to be, saying that they came through the pugging system of China, like just absolute unknowns of the scene, being absolute studs against tier 1.5 teams, just was so marvelous to see. We'll talk about it in our spotlight, in our stonks or whatnot. But I have so much hope for Rare Atom. I have so much hope for Asian CS as a whole because, man, it looks like there is slowly starting to be a changing of the guard. We can start talking about new talent, and we can start saying, hey, these veterans finally have something to give to these younger players. And when they come into these tier 1 tournaments, they actually have something to give. And a 4th place at DH Valencia of an 8-team event is impressive to me out of the gates. I just have high hopes for Rare Atom in general.
Then they got out of a really difficult group, if I remember. It's coming on about a month since that event, but yeah, they played that event on hard mode, and they still got out of groups, and even they ran a very close game against the Outsiders. Since then, it wasn't perfect. I think they stumbled in the open qualifier, but you can't really blame them for it because it's some sort in the open qualifier for, I believe, if I could.
They were on the EU side of things, and so they made it through the open qualifier, but they made it to the close and they got absolutely battered.
Yeah.
And it sucks that was the case, right? Because they wanted to come to EU to boot camp, but the closed qualifier didn't actually coincide with them coming to the Asia one.
Right.
And we'll obviously see later on in September where it's wings up instead. So it's a bit of a bummer with just the scheduling sort of things, but yeah, that is the kind of caveat to this whole conversation.
Yeah, I think I'll say one last thing on Rare Atom before other things can command our attention. I mean, look, they're a team that doesn't play these open qualifiers all that much. All things said, they're not used to that kind of environment, so I'm not gonna harp on them too much. We'll just have to see what more things this region can do coming up, as well as other regions who really came out to play. Shoot. 9Z and I guess South America as a whole, if you want to include 00 Nation in the discussion, I've actually come out to play, at least in terms of the Argentinian scene. We can hype up Try all we want, but 9Z have become the breakout South American team and are actually putting themselves in the running to be the best South American team.
So when I saw these guys at Challenger way back in February, I was so excited to see how Bit would try to figure out the situation when they brought in Lucan and try to create an IGL out of a player who wasn't necessarily an IGL ever in his career in Max, who was largely a player that was a second fiddle of sorts to Try and his endeavors when they had that original 9Z breakout lineup when they beat Vitality and whatnot at Showdown. And since then, it feels like they have figured out the formula of the next up and coming players in the South American region beyond Brazil, right?
Yes.
Bringing out players like Lucan and players like David that are largely in just very smaller portions of the South American region. And these guys are absolute studs, let me tell you. Like, these guys are ballsy as hell, and they're going into top level bits of international competition, and they're styling on these guys. They're looking so comfortable. When I watched them at the Rubet Cup, they were giving a run for the for Fira's money as well, right? I believe they beat them.
They beat him twice.
Yeah, they beat them twice in best of threes, and like that is just so impressive. Even NQZ, that a player that necessarily isn't even in a top top team in Brazil, coming out and being an absolute baller on the AWP with how aggressive he is. It is so remarkable to see how 9Z has figured out the pipeline of South American Counter-Strike, and they're sticking to this formula. And I'm excited to see them at the next RMR. I'm excited to see their just growth, because it's paving the way for so many other South American teams to really strut their stuff and try to make a wave in these open qualifiers. And hey, we'll probably see another group of 5 individuals sooner rather than later to kind of combat this kind of 9Z renaissance of some sort.
Yeah, I mean, even then, they're leading teams like Leviathan and Isurus, those two teams following close behind in their footsteps. This region is not just 9Z. It has so much more to give. And genuinely said, all these top dogs are under threat. We wanted to talk about Imperial. We'll hit it during overtime, and I'll spoil the topic just a little bit. The new blood of South America is really here to just take hold. In these next couple of years, it's going to mean so darn much to the rest of the scene. So for the guys over at SA, this next generation is going to kill. So I'm super excited for the future of SA. We'll keep moving it on because, well, we have our other breakouts here. I think we all already know all about these, Pally.
Yeah, Iberia is a fantastic place to be right now. They had a fantastic event to witness at ESL Challenger Valencia, having Movistar Riders lift the trophy there and then go straight on to Cologne, carry on that momentum with an insane run in Cologne. FTW as well, having just what a nonsense run. It was just so much fun to actually be in the studio for that actual run with the Portuguese. And mind you, we're not talking Brazil here. We're talking Portugal speaking their native language of Portuguese, fighting all the way through the conference bracket, as difficult as it was, and it will be attending the main stage of EPL. It is just fantastic to see such a run from both of these teams, Fi. It makes me just so excited for the future of Portuguese, Iberian Counter-Strike in general. Seeing these teams have so many opportunities through these national championships time and time again, and not actually being able to convert it. And now something is starting to give way. You kind of look towards the rebuild of SAW now reintegrating the best parts of FTW. FTW themselves taking on a little bit that's been given to them from SAW. There is just a lot of lineups here that are going to get a couple of cracks at the kind of international lineup, so to speak, Fi, and I'm just excited to see kind of what potential that they have. What do you think?
I think that this is, I mean, for a region that has definitely just been thrown under the rug and just been a complete afterthought. If you thought French Counter-Strike was bad, talk about this. But anyway, talking about this, you know, they've never really had a true infrastructure of a unit. You know, technically said they're playing on worse ping than the vast majority of Europe. If you even want to consider distances and all that stuff, you know, it feels like they're kind of in like that Turkish scene moment, right?
Yeah.
You can compare it to that, where they might have like, a breakout player named Mixwell who's now playing Valorant, you know, maybe one or two of those, but they never really had that chance to break out. Here it is, folks. You know, they were a little minor part of Europe. Now they're here, and Movistar Riders, they are now in the HLTV top 10 for the first time in a Spanish team has ever been there. Congratulations to Movistar. This is a huge step for the Iberian scene. Let's go and hit it off, though. We got one more.
Yeah, I mean, the Bad News Eagles, man, like the Balkans in general, we've had such a long time where you kind of handpick the players that you want from the Balkan region, and you're
Right.
kind of like, hey, this is going to be a great addition to my international escapade. Like, let's just see how this goes. But now we got like Bad News Eagles being a real threat. I mean, frankly, it sucks that they're not actually getting the opportunity to play in some of these tier 1 tournaments on LAN.
Hmm.
We'll probably see them at the RMR next, but it is just so it's like a breath of fresh air to see a team like this try to take a crack at it, stay together for as long as they have, and try to, really bring a new identity to some, like, a new facet to European Counter-Strike, right? That's what really makes
Hmm.
me excited, that they're really getting success with this kind of puggy-esque type of style of play.
And you kind of see the passion that these players bring to the table too.
Oh yeah.
I mean, these guys embody what Counter Strike really is. The Balkans can never just be swept aside as saying they're just it's just Nico and Hunter to be the only people who come out of it. Good luck to the Bad News Eagles, as they already had their star-studded start of the year. They made it to the main stage of the major, and just need to capture that momentum again. We know they have it. All right, and now for the final, official segment, we're gonna bring it on down to stonks. Stonks. We have our players of, not necessarily the week, but we're talking players, the best players that we had throughout our minor regions and throughout the start of this year on the first side of the player break. I'll hand it over to you, Pally. Who do you got?
Jam Young, baby. I mean, we haven't necessarily talk too much about Rare Items individuals particularly, but man, Jam Young at ESL Challenger Valencia had a crazy 1v4 clutch. I wish I could pull it up, but you guys can look it up. This guy is absolutely incredibly came through, I believe, the pugging system. This is a quote from Kaze,
Mhm.
but just nuts player. And I am just like, so he actually had a couple stints in Europe. I believe he came to Cologne when they had their studio environment, but he still looked very fish out of water in that situation. But
Mhm.
this guy just looks so calm and calculated. He looks like he's been playing European style of Counter-Strike for a long time. And in all these chaotic situations, he always comes out on top. And he's such a treat to watch. Like, even if Rare Atom are scrapping through these rounds, it's so much excitement to watch this guy play. When the POV is on him, the observers picked him out.
Yep.
It's just a feast for the eyes.
Yeah, I think he characterizes Asian Counter Strike. Some people say, look, in a good way. That is, Asian Counter Strike said to be, pretty just like run at you type Counter Strike. He has a little bit of that. He has some of the firepower. He has immense firepower, but he also has the structure of that Rare Atom team to back him up. So I'll also throw my chip into that. My pick, however, that's gonna be DGT from 9Z. Also got to give commiserations to NQZ, the newest offer and newest addition to 9Z, who is also just, turned out to be an absolute star. But DGT having some of the most consistent performances for his squad, running through the RMR no less, and then, still finding momentum towards the tail end as the more aggressive rifler on both sides of the coin, only 21 and mostly just only barely really making his international debut. He still has a lot of gas in the tank, and this guy right here, what you're looking at, is the future of South American Counter-Strike.
I mean, he's one of the only players from Uruguay to actually have gone to a major, right? And
Yeah.
that's just crazy. That we have another country now relevant in Counter-Strike. And look, DGT was always a player that has kind of had to reinvent himself and reinvent the wheel a couple of times in all of these lineups. He stayed in this core for quite some time. And the fact that he still looks like he's got more facets to him, more perspectives to give to the game, that just makes me excited that he could be a puzzle piece for another team that wants to kind of dip into the toes of South American Counter-Strike on the Brazilian side of things. And maybe he just becomes just that marquee player alongside Max and Rox on 9Z, and this core just kind of carries through, and you kind of have the other up and coming players to come through with David and NQZ. Those players on the lineup kind of ebb and flow as you will. But
Mm.
DGT's always been really impressive to me. I've always loved watching how aggressive he's been playing, especially. But I guess we can kind of move it on over with this kind of 50 seconds left. Do you have any real outliers in this minor region segment that they kind of put out on center stage here.
Yeah, so I mean, I would kind of give my chip in to NQZ specifically. Also, David needs a highlight. There's, I mean, shit, everyone from 9Z could probably get it
Yeah.
from my book. I'm a 9Zer, that's for sure. If I wanted to pick anyone from any other team, I do have to give my shout out to Alex as a player from the Movistar Riders. We kind of had the hype up a little bit a couple weeks back, but I'll just give my shout out. Any outliers from your end?
Yeah, I'll give another nod to a FTW player who's not actually on FTW anymore. He's going to Saw. They had a little bit of a shuffle there, but it was Jerks. He had like an insane series where I believe on the first map of play they got absolutely battered. And I think he had like 2 kills on Inferno, and then he came back top fragged on the next 2 maps and just blew him out of the server. Just nuts stuff from him, and I'm just excited to see what Portugal has in store because they've got a lot of talent, a lot of really young players. And I'm just excited to see what they have more in the tank. So I think that's all that we're gonna really have in this minor region segment. I'm glad that we did this and took the time to talk about this. But let's go into overtime.
Yeah. Well, just jump into overtime. We'll just revisit some of the topics that we did miss throughout the recent news. And well, now I want to go ahead and check about this topic. Well, look at the monstrosity of a top right picture.
So glad we have this cartoon here. Oh my god. Make it a staple, man. Oh my god.
But what I'm trying to, bring up as a question here is that Fallen, Bolts, and, Brazil as a whole has reused this core of players to absolute death. And to try and make the only, viable rosters concerning these players, as well as Taco, right? Just keep using these, the major winning core or major winners over and over again. But we've seen, is it time for new blood in Imperial with FNX leaving? I know you added back in Cello. He's definitely new blood. With Peacemaker gone, are we going to see a bigger shuffle here in Imperial in the future?
I mean, obviously, I think that's like probably going to happen. These players are looking to just phase out. And it sucks because I always thought that their plan was they wanted to just like cruise all the way to Rio and try to perform there and on home soil. But I don't even think that that's going to be the case if they just keep shuffling players out, in my opinion. But look, on paper, this move is actually pretty cool because you bring in a player that. So main issue about Imperial is they're sorely lacking on relevant 2022 European Counter-Strike. It's been a real problem for them, and you could see the big issue about that is their vertigo being absolutely abysmal. Them trying to pocket pick Ancient at one point, and that looking absolutely abysmal as well. So the 2 newest maps, quote unquote, in the pool, just looking all out of sorts for this team. And bringing in Cello, a player that has played alongside Bit, who I'd have to say is pretty relevant in today's Counter-Strike. They have a good understanding of how the game is meant to be played and the tendencies that some of these players have. And you bring that over to Fallen, and you bring in these little ideas here and there, and then you kind of say, hey, these are the ideas that I've gotten from Bit. You take that into your stride, Fallen. I'm going to go click heads, and maybe it kind of just aligns in and of itself. You fix the firepower problem. You fix a little bit of the relevancy issue. But again, this is all on paper, and I'm still yet to see like just outstanding performances from Fur on the big stage, from Bolts on the big stage. And I hope that we can kind of, it's all going to just be a hope and a dream that we get to see this kind of performance from them in the future.
Yeah, what I will say is First still has gas in the tank. There's like, I mean, what I saw from him, definitely still a driving force in any of the wins that Imperial had, all things said. But I do think that, you got to start investing in this 2022 talent like 9ZR, like even Shoot Furia are. I mean, they're working with Drop and they have Safe. There's, new names that people haven't seen before. I understand that the Brazilian hype is so immense and the fan base is so massive for this major winning core. But at one point, sometimes you just got to go ahead and get the latest and the greatest. So that's my shout. One last thing that we didn't reach out upon is toward the later end of the NA and EU segment, and that is Snakes making his way back into North American talent. I'm not sure many people who do or have heard about Snakes X, but currently he was the prodigy in North America. He was dominating tier 2. He was going to be the next tier 1 opper until, unfortunately, he was only 15 years old and he wasn't able to play in the Mountain Dew League at the time. He's back, and he's back to destroying.
I am so happy to see this guy back. I like when I was watching. I think a huge problem with North America at that point in time was this like vehement like rejection of newer talent and trying to recycle and reshuffle the players that were super experienced. And although Snakes was always on the short list, he never got that big jump up that we were kind of hoping for. Obviously, age being a big factor as well. It's great to see him back on a team that, you know, kind of needed some shakeups in one tap. They went through their old relegation period of their own. They cruised through it, and will be at ECL next season. And it's just good. It's just good to see him on an ECL caliber team, and he doesn't have to fight through the whole advanced situation again and try to like make a name for himself all over again. Like he's here to stay, and I'm just so glad that he's kind of taking another crack at it and trying to relearn what it is to play in 2022 Counter-Strike and find himself again, because I think there's always going to be room for players like this, and I hope that we can see more from him.
All right, folks. Well, we've reached the ending point of our show. The 1 hour mark has been passed, and that's going to do it. That has been episode 3 of the Not Acceptable podcast. We went with a little bit of a different format here, and I think probably all things said, probably our smoothest show to date. So, I'm happy with it. I hope you're happy with it at home, and I hope you're happy with it, Paladin. That is, I'm
happy with it, man. It's this show is always going to be evolving. This is kind of like just an experiment of sorts, and it's always going to be changing. We've got a rough idea of how we want to go about things, and as long as you guys are here on for the ride with us, we're happy to kind of steer this ship as it may for as long as we possibly can.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to go ahead and do it. This has been episode 3 of the Not Acceptable podcast. Check us out. Subscribe to Paladin's YouTube or follow us on Twitch, whatever that good stuff is. And, well, we'll go ahead and catch you next week for next week's episode. Peace!